everybody, welcome back to our channel. My name is Lindsay, I'm the fantasy fan.
And I'm Danielle, your resident romantic, and we are friends
till the book ends. And today we are bringing you a video that's going to teach you how to read more in 2021.
Gonna teach you the electric side.
Oh, it's 2021. We want to read more, right? Mm-hmm. So Danielle and I have brainstormed some obvious and maybe some not so obvious tricks and tips on how to read more. Personally, I read over 200 books last year.
I'm so jealous of that. Last year was a bad reading year for me, and I'm like so envious of you.
This year's kind of a bad reading year for me thus far. But there are some things that we both have discovered over the course of the past year or so that things that help us personally to read more. So Danielle, what's your first tip on how to get some more reads in?
One of the most recent things I've learned about getting more reads in is utilizing audiobooks. I am not 100% for audiobooks because I am a traditionalist when it comes to books. I need the physical feel and I need to physically read everything that I'm looking at. So I will always prefer traditional. Mm-hmm. However, audiobooks have come in handy because while I am not living with my parents anymore, I visit them a lot. I visit my grandmother. Sometimes I visit my brother. So usually that's like a 30-minute drive out and a 30-minute drive back.
Right.
And normally I would listen to music, but, you know, if you listen to the radio for 7 days in a row, you're going to know what songs are playing. So it's been kind of convenient to just pop my phone on to an audiobook and listen to it on the drive. I'll listen to it as I'm getting ready in the morning. A lot of things that I usually do is I'll set up Netflix to binge a show, but then if I have to go do something where I can't physically watch the show, I kind of lose the credibility of the show. So the audiobooks kind of fit into that, niche need I have. Even if I'm just, coming into work to go set up the office for the day. It's just so convenient.
Yeah.
The weather hasn't been the greatest outside, but now that we're getting into spring, I actually live, a 10-minute walk away from a library, so I plan on, popping in some headphones and listening to audiobooks on the way to the library. So I found that they're so convenient, and, they're constantly filling in the little gaps that I have between my life. So even if you're a traditionalist like me, I would still recommend trying an audiobook. Give it at least 2 tries, because as people who have listened to audiobooks, not every narrator is the same, and not every narrator can fit the genre of the book or the mold of the book. So at least give it 2 tries, I would say. But overall, I think it's a really great tool that I've used to help me read more lately.
Yeah, and that's such a good point about the narrators, is that sometimes you'll turn on an audiobook and you're like, this person's voice is not it.
No.
And you're like, well, this is one that I'm going to have to read physically. But sometimes they, you turn on and you're like, this is acceptable.
90% of them have really hit the mark.
Yeah.
So I try it.
Well, my first tip or I guess our second tip on how to read more, is to read what you want to read. So I know that sounds like a silly tip, but I feel is oftentimes, and I felt this way too, that you have to read something that our society considers valuable or part of the canon in order to get something out of the book. And I'm like, well, you can read Jennifer L. Armentrout, you can read Stephanie Meyer, you can read smutty little romance books or mystery murder of the day type books and still have something beneficial and valuable come out of them, especially if it brings you joy, instead of feeling like you have to slog and suffer through Charles Dickens or, who else is George Orwell, you know what I mean? You don't have to feel like you have to read big old books that people are oh yes, I read this and it changed my life because now I understand Charles Dickens.
Right. Or Jane Austen.
No, you should all be forced to read Jane Austen. No, I get it. She's not everyone's cup of tea, but give her a try if you haven't. She's my favorite. But, so don't feel pressured or feel embarrassed if you are somebody who doesn't I hate, literary fiction. I can't stand it. It never sits with me. I find myself bored throughout the entire thing. And so I used to feel as if, well, if I was picking up a romance or a YA, fantasy, that I was less of a reader because I wasn't reading. I felt as if I couldn't if you're in public and you're reading something, you're is this embarrassing to read in public? Read it! Who cares if it's got Fabio on the cover? Don't feel like you have to set up and dictate how you can read or what you can read. Just go with the flow, and whatever, suits you and whatever fits your needs best, go for it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. My next one is kind of related to audiobooks, so it's like a part B. Still a traditionalist over here, but I've found ebooks have been very helpful. I used to think ebooks were super helpful, but now I've actually found I prefer audiobooks over ebooks.
Okay.
But ebooks help to fill the void where you're at a place that you can't physically bring a book to, which, okay, I know, this is obvious. Everyone has already learned this. Danielle is late to the train on ebooks, which is fine. But a lot of times, like, I would always try and read at work during my lunch, and it's fine to bring a book, but I am someone who covets physical possessions of books, which means I don't want to ruin the pages if I have them in my purse. I used to hate ruining books when they were in my book bag and I have to bring them to high school. So I like that an ebook, I can take it to work and read it there and not have to worry about ruining my book. Not that I really ride public transit, but I also feel like if you ride public transit, that's another good way to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Anytime that you're going somewhere where you can't listen to an audiobook and it's maybe a little too bulky to have the physical book, an ebook's like kind of a perfect replacement for it.
And they're pretty cheap. Like on Amazon. Like you can buy ebooks for like 99 cents and stuff.
Right.
And that's when you get down the deep dark hole of buying like 10 different ebooks because they're not expensive, but then all of a sudden you have so many you have to read.
Well, that is the difference between you and I, is that
okay.
Is that I am totally fine like renting an ebook from my library. But I don't think I could ever have a collection of ebooks like you do. Like, I love to see full-blown bookshelves.
Yeah.
I would have to go through and rebuy everything physically.
The only ebooks that I buy are, like, historical romances or anything that's in a mass market paperback because I hate mass market paperbacks.
Okay, this is true.
Because the spines crack so easy. And
I could see
they're just so tiny and so little to read, and I don't like that.
So, ebooks. Go for it.
Well, my next point is kind of another obvious one, but it's something that I struggle with personally, and that is continuing on in series. So I'm a chronic, I'll read the first book, and I'll be like, wow, I really like that, 4 out of 5, or even 5 out of 5s. And then if there's more to the series, or if I have to wait for the next book to come out, it just drops off my radar like 100%. And then I'm left with being like, going through my Goodreads, I'm like, oh, I really like that. Why didn't I continue on in that series? Like, why didn't I, do this? And I feel as if you find a series that works for you, read them. Like, don't sit on your hands like I do and forget about it, because then you're more likely to, find something that you like if you already know that you enjoy the characters, the writing style, the plot is something that interests you. Well, the whole point of a series is that continues on. So, don't sit on not finishing a series or continuing a series. Just prioritize that because you already know that you enjoy parts and aspects of it. So read your series, people.
Plus, with series, like, when you read the first book, you already go through the sluggish part of getting the background, getting the build-up.
Yeah.
So when you start the next book, you already have all of that to go forward with.
That's true. That's a good point.
The second book, for the most part, should jump right into the action, which can pull you in more.
Definitely.
So I think that's always a good option to go for.
Good point.
My goal is to encourage you to read more continuous series.
Danielle's like, yes.
I will make you. Another one for me, which I know is going to sound obvious, but it's actually a little bit more involved than you may think, is don't be afraid to DNF or do not finish a book. I know maybe some people have it very easy to just be like, I don't like it, we're done, moving on to the next. I know when I first started reading, it was always hard for me to DNF a book because I am someone personally in life who likes to make a list and complete the list, or make goals and complete the goal.
Yeah.
So for me to be able to complete a book, even if I might not 100% be into it, I'd be like, wow, what a great thing, I finished the book. But then the more you start to force yourself to read books that are kind of a struggle, the more you're like, what a waste of time that was.
Yeah, and it can put you in a reading slump.
Right, absolutely. And then you're like hesitant to read anymore because is it going to be another waste of time? So save yourself all of that mental struggle and time waste, and just realize when you're not feeling a book, whether it's 25%, 30%, or even 80%. Whenever you start to hit the fact that you can't do it anymore, put it down. If you don't want to completely get rid of it, that's fine. Maybe you're not at the right age for it or at the right time in your life. I know, like, now when I try to read preteen books, it's just not happening. But they're books that I would have enjoyed when I was younger. So sometimes just put it aside, give it a couple years, come back to it. If you still can't do it, just get rid of it. Or if you can, then that's great. But just figure out when it's okay to DNF a book, and don't force yourself to keep going.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
100% agree with that one. Then the next one that I have is if you find an author that you jive with, read their backlist. Found out that like I really liked Jennifer L. Armentrout, and so I was I'm gonna go back and read her backlist. Or like Brandon Sanderson is someone that I started one series, and he has like 20 something books out, and I started with his young adult sci-fi series, and then I was like, okay, well, I like his style of writing, so I would probably really enjoy other things written by him. So go back and see what that author has written. Also on Google, if you type in authors like Brandon Sanderson or books like Skyward or whatever, there's a whole bunch of lists that always pop up with like recommendations and suggestions, or like Reddit is a place where there's always people are always chatting about that, or on Goodreads there are like different forums and stuff for that. So, you know, find something that you like, read the author's backlist, or Google something that if, you know, you've read everything that they've got. You know, if you really like Jay Kristoff and you like his weird style of like with his, he writes and then he has these writes with footnotes, which is bizarre, but if you like that, I'm sure you can Google someone who writes like that, and you can find a similar style, and that way it kind of all links it together, and you're more likely to enjoy your reading that way. So definitely check out authors' backlists, and also the Googling of the similar authors or books.
Yes, and one last little tip I'm going to throw in here, which is kind of a little off course, is also just focus on reading faster. Like, I know when I first started reading, when I was younger, I was like, oh, this is kind of slow going. Yeah. But you have to remember that the more you read, the more that you're going to adapt to the ability to read faster. Yeah. Make sure that if you get caught on any words you don't know, look it up. Expand your vocabulary so the next time you encounter that, you, like, finish the sentence quicker. And then the other thing is that there are a whole bunch of, like, little, I don't want to say how-to videos, but there's, like, little, guides and like games you can do online to help test your readability and how quickly you can read. So if you are interested in like, I don't really want to do the other ideas, but I do want to read faster, there is a way that you can like train your brain and your eyes to read faster. So keep that in mind as well.
Yes. So thank you for watching today's video. Hope you learned something new, or maybe, you know, some of our tips were kind of obvious, but hopefully maybe that jogged something in your mind that you were like, I really need to DNF that book that I've been reading for 6 months, or pick up the damn sequel.
Or if you have any other tips that we haven't mentioned, feel free to share it in the comments, because we're always trying to learn new ways to read as much as we can.
More. Yes. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you guys in our next video.
Bye!